So let's get right down to business because today's video is going to be quite a long one since there is a lot of information to actually talk about. First of all, you guys know that E3 2020 has officially been canceled and there really wasn't no replacement for E3 2020 up until now. Finally, we officially have somewhat of a replacement for E3 2020, and the replacement for this year's E3 is going to be called Summer Game Fest. Here it is right here. It's actually going to be replacing a E3, like I said, and it's actually going to be from Jeff, I think, Keighley. You guys know Jeff Keighley. He's the guy who runs the Game Awards every year in December. It makes sense that he would want to put something like this together just because when it comes to the gaming industry, I feel like he's a man that's very passionate about things like this. He understands the gaming industry overall. It makes sense. Now, basically what the Summer Games Fest is going to be, the Summer Games Fest is going to be a pretty much a game reveal type deal where it's going to be from May to August of this year, of course, and they're pretty much just going to be throwing out a whole bunch of game reveals regarding next gen stuff, regarding current gen stuff. It's just going to be about game announcements pretty much, and that's actually pretty nice that I guess that he actually put this together because honestly we didn't have a replacement for E3 2020, and it is nice that we can get some kind of place where we can actually get some kind of game reveals. And if you read down here in this paragraph right here, you can see all the developers that Jeff Keighley actually got on board to do this Summer Games Fest. What I also want to know about Summer Games Fest is I want to know how they're actually going to present all the Summer Games Fest like announcements. How are they going to do this? How are you going to be able to watch this thing and things like that? And then on top of that, I want to know if this is the direction that E3 is going to be headed in the near future because as you guys know, with the last couple of E3s have been getting kind of weird just due to the fact that, for instance, Sony hasn't really wanted to show up. Sony hasn't really wanted to show up to any of the current E3s for like the last 2 years, including last year and now this year, which is kind of weird. Why wouldn't Sony want to show up to E3? A lot of times things at E3 just get leaked out ahead of schedule, so E3 is kind of like a dying thing in my opinion, and some people out there will tell you E3 is kind of a dying thing, although a lot of people tell you E3 is a dying brand, a dying thing. It's funny that the first year they actually opened up E3 to the public, I think a couple of years ago, it had the biggest crowd that they ever had at an E3, which is actually insane if you actually think about it. But let's go back to some of these developers that are actually going to be on board when it actually comes to this Summer Games Fest. You can see we got 2K, Activision, Bandai Namco, Bethesda, Blizzard, Bungie, CD Projekt Red, Digital Extremes, Electronic Arts, Microsoft, Sony. Yes, Sony Interactive. Yes, they don't want to do E3s anymore, but now they want to do this whole Summer Games Fest. But I guess when it comes to Sony specifically, I guess this is not too surprising since for a while now, I think last year and part of this year, I think they started doing their own presentations just like the Nintendo Directs. I kind of don't remember what the name is, but I remember they actually started doing this, and since this is a digital online event, of course, maybe Sony's like, well, it's kind of like our presentations we started doing for the PlayStation brand, so we might as well jump on board with this Summer Games Fest. So it looks like there is a lot of big players in the gaming industry that are actually on board with this whole Summer Games Fest, which is actually nice. And it looks like Summer Games Fest or whatever will run June June 9th through the 14th. And like I said, this whole Summer Games Fest goes from like May to August. So there should be just a lot of random game announcements out there from starting from now maybe until the end of August maybe. And I guess the nice thing about the Summer Games Fest in particular is going to be the fact that they are going to be spreading these game announcements out. As far as I'm aware, it's not going to be like E3 where you get one announcement after another. It's going to be kind of spread out, which is actually very nice for the consumer because a lot of times when you're watching an E3 presentation, you're watching these E3 presentations back to back, or for instance, you're watching one presentation but they they stack games one after another, so sometimes you can't remember all the game announcements, and sometimes it can be a little bit too messy, where I feel like this may be handled a little bit better as well. And honestly, I'm actually curious to see how this is going to be handled and how this all plays out in the end, and ultimately, is this going to be the future for the game industry, and is this going to be the future of E3? Is E3 no longer going to exist, which is actually interesting. Now, the next one is actually going to be about a very good deal that I actually saw, and I was actually going to make a video about this separately, talking about these different items, and I actually want to talk about the this deal that I saw. So basically, this deal that I'm going to throw in this episode is actually about the Apple iPad, and the Apple iPad that's currently on sale right now is the iPad base model, and the iPad base model is dropped to $250 right now at Best Buy. I know it's not the top of the line model like the iPad Pro, it's not the middle model or anything like that. It is going to be the base model, but I really wanted to talk about this deal in particular because I think anytime you can see the iPad base model, the iPad 7th generation 10.2 inch for $250. It's almost like a no-brainer for anybody. Sure, it doesn't have the latest and greatest from Apple when it comes to processing power, when it comes to overall design. It doesn't look as good, but for what you're actually paying for, you're getting one heck of a device, of course. And I think at $250, it's like, again, a no-brainer. You might as well really run out and buy this thing because you're getting a whole hell of a lot of iPad with this actual device, just because $250 is not breaking the bank. And on top of that, the best thing about this iPad is you are getting a very big screen for $250. You're getting a 10.2 inch screen. So if you're somebody that needs to do like light emailing or light web browsing or things like that, then I really think this thing does shine. And this thing's going to be nice for people who just want to browse the web, maybe watch some videos online like Netflix, YouTube, and things like that. Overall, this is a killer deal, and I can't recommend this iPad enough. For $250, you're going to be getting a very good iPad and a very good usable iPad. Just keep your expectations in check, of course, just because there is going to be limitations with this. Of course, you won't get the best screen, you won't get the best design, you won't get the best performance, but overall, for $250, what can you really what do you really have to complain about? There's really nothing you can complain about, because also if you look at the price of this iPad for $250 for this iPad alone, I feel like there's nothing in the realm of this iPad that can really compete with this iPad when it comes to performance, when it comes to design, and also when it comes to longevity and support. Because you guys know, if you buy an Apple product, most likely Apple supports their products for about 5 or 6 years, so you have support for many years to come. At least when it comes to the software, you won't have to worry about the software getting outdated anytime soon. You'll have it for a while and things like this. So yes, props for Apple for actually dropping this down to $250. Normally the price of the base model, the 7th generation 10.2 inch iPad, is normally around, I think, $350, but now it's $250. And this is not a deal that you should take like immediately if you don't need one, I guess, because the thing is, apparently with this iPad, the 7th gen base model iPad, apparently this thing goes on sale all the time. The normal for this is basically $250. It's not always $250, but more times than not, it's always $250. But yeah, just an overall a very good deal. The next one on my list is actually going to be about Nintendo. Apparently, for the first time since June 2013, Nintendo is not going to be holding a Direct in June, and that's actually very unfortunate news. Again, keep in mind, these are only rumors and speculations at this time. There's no concrete proof that this is not going to be going down. Of course, you guys know the situation going on this year with E3. E3's been canceled, like I said previously, so I can kind of see this being a reality, that Nintendo could actually cancel their Direct for June. But honestly, also, it doesn't make sense to me at all, because if you look at the state of Nintendo in 2020, Nintendo is a really weird company in 2020, because when we look at game announcements for 2020 and look at what Nintendo has upcoming for 2020, anything's on the table. And the problem is, with 2020, we do not have any solid good game announcements really for 2020, especially for the later half. We still really don't know what's coming out in October, November, and December, and that's usually the biggest hard-hitting time for video game releases. And it would be weird if Nintendo just said, nope, we're not going to do a Nintendo Direct in June because E3 is not going down, so let's just skip it. Maybe if Nintendo had some more announcements out there and there's maybe a couple more hard-hitting games that were already announced in like a previous Direct from earlier this year, maybe I can see them skipping June, but I think now is not the time to skip a June Direct or a Direct in the upcoming future, just due to the fact that we don't know what's coming out for Nintendo, and Nintendo's been super silent with the Nintendo Switch game announcements. And on top of that, they should really get out a Direct in June, just due to the fact that more and more people are buying the Nintendo Switch. This whole epidemic that's currently going around in the world is making more people buy the Nintendo Switches, and Nintendo Switch sales have been going up. So I wouldn't see why Nintendo wouldn't want to do this unless they really don't have anything ready, but I doubt that's the case for Nintendo. I really do think Nintendo does have something planned for us this year, because of course they need something out there. It's been really dry on the Nintendo side. So do I believe this? On one hand, I want to believe that the Nintendo Direct may not come during June. It could actually come in July or August, or it could actually still come in June, because like I said, Nintendo really needs to get the ball rolling, and they really need to announce something soon, because this year is pretty much still up in the air for big game announcements. Outside of Animal Crossing, outside of Xenoblade, we don't really have anything that's super meaty and super big that everyone's super excited for. So I'd really hope Nintendo would do something about this, but this is really weird. And apparently it's going to be coming, but apparently from this article, it says June's Nintendo Direct will be delayed. Maybe it's due to the whole epidemic as well. As long as they can get this out at a timely manner and get it out maybe at the end of June or even sometime around July, then that's going to make everybody happy. But they can't be delaying this that long, because Nintendo, like I said, this year is still very questionable for game announcements for 2020. Next up on the list, it looks like we actually have some information on an upcoming PlayStation VR 2. You guys know most likely Sony, for the next PlayStation, the PlayStation 5 is going to be releasing a brand new PlayStation VR 2. And what are they going to be doing for the PlayStation VR 2? Of course, one of the biggest things apparently that Sony is going to be doing for the PlayStation VR 2 is going to be doing more tracking and things like that, which some other VR headsets on the market are currently doing. You look at stuff like the Oculus Quest. The Oculus Quest does actually have motion tracking with your hands, which is actually cool. And apparently Sony is working on more stuff like that for the PlayStation VR 2, and honestly, that's actually some pretty exciting news, especially since VR is all about things like trying to be as realistic as possible, trying to make you immersed in all these experiences. And the next step, besides you actually seeing your environment, would be making you feel like you're more in the environment. And the best way to make you feel like you're more in the environment with these VR experiences would be some kind of hand tracking and some type of motion tracking. And they are apparently working on that for the upcoming PlayStation VR 2, which is actually very interesting. Apparently they've been filing some more patents for just different designs and different things for the PlayStation VR 2. Honestly, anytime they can make improvements would actually be really great. And I feel like it is about time that they actually do something like this, because the type of motion tracking in the games right now for PlayStation VR are just not that good. You look at things like I think the Sony Move controllers that came out back on the PS3, they're still using those for a lot of the games on the PlayStation VR that support motion, of course. And honestly, those aren't as good as something like true hand tracking. If they can get something like true hand tracking, I really do think that'll be a very big game changer. And I really do think Sony of all companies is actually going to implement this in their own VR headset, just due to the fact that they are, if you don't know this, the leaders of VR right now. They may not have the most they may not have the most powerful VR headset on the market. It has aged a little bit not too well compared to what's currently on the market, but they do have the most units sold. But that makes sense. They are a gaming company, and their brand is very big, and it's very easy to just pick up a PlayStation VR headset. You just need a PlayStation to actually play your PlayStation VR headset. So it does make sense that they are the one with the most sold units of VR headsets. And if they are the leader in VR headsets, the next way to promote their brand or make their VR headsets stand out or even be more better and make people want to buy them and have a true successor to the original PlayStation VR would be motion tracking. And overall, I think motion tracking would bring the game selection up a notch. I think it would make games much more immersive, much more better to play. I think maybe more people might be more interested to check it out in the next version of VR if they had motion tracking. Motion tracking with your hands does seem like it would be a really cool idea for it, and they should probably implement it. And I do believe that all this stuff that we're currently hearing about the next PlayStation VR headset is going to be real. I don't see why they wouldn't be working on things like facial tracking and hand tracking and things like that, just to make the experience a little bit more immersive and a little bit better. And here's some patents and just some things about things they might be working on when it comes to the next PlayStation VR 2. And without a doubt, it's pretty much at this point already confirmed that we are going to be getting some kind of successor to the original PlayStation VR. They can't just continue on selling VR games and have the PSVR that's been out since like 2016, because that thing, like I said, compared to other VR headsets, is starting to age. Not too bad. It's still usable, but compared to what's on the market now, it is starting to age. And with games starting to become better, especially with next generation hardware, most likely it would make sense they would want to update it, at least if they're not going to do like hand tracking and do like motion tracking and things like that. I think at the least they would want to up the resolution of the actual headset, just because they'll have more power to play with next generation. And really what I'm actually hoping for of all things is I really hope they find a way to put all the cables inside the PS5, so you won't have an extra box laying around. We won't have like 1,000 wires actually laying out outside of your headset, because I really do think the biggest drawback for the PlayStation VR headset is actually the hookup process. And some people just don't like the hookup process, don't like all the cables. If they can get the box inside the PS5, if they can make the headset wireless for the first time, I really do think that'll be a big game changer. And I really do think it'll make more people want to play this thing, just because you won't have to worry about wires being tripped over when you're playing games and things like that. I know there's been a couple of times when I've been playing PlayStation VR where there's some games that are super immersive and they really want you to like move around in your chair or get up and move around, but the problem is there's a cord attached to the PlayStation VR headset. So for instance, if you're not paying attention, you can trip over the cord, or you can accidentally pull like your PlayStation off of your entertainment system, or the box connected to the PlayStation could actually rip off. So I do hope that's the biggest thing they actually change. But overall, some exciting news for PlayStation VR fans, or just VR fans in general, that all this stuff may be coming to the PlayStation VR 2, which is actually very interesting. And then the last one for today's episode is actually going to be about some shady business practices that GameStop has actually been doing for their company. So you guys know right now the Nintendo Switch is on a roll, and a lot of people are buying the Nintendo Switch due to the epidemic that's currently going on around in the world right now. And that makes sense because everybody's stuck at home and everybody wants to find ways to play games. And of course, Animal Crossing just came out on the Nintendo Switch, and so many people want to buy a Nintendo Switch, whether it's the Lite version or the regular Nintendo Switch. So GameStop's like, yeah, I know a lot of people are scalping the Nintendo Switch. I know it's super hard to find Nintendo Switches, so what are we going to do as a company? Let's make sure people can still buy the Nintendo Switch that they want, but let's make this a little bit more complicated, and let's actually make sure that they spend more money at our store as well, not just buying a Nintendo Switch. So this deal right here is specifically for the Nintendo Switch Lite specifically. I don't know if they're doing any other deals for the regular Nintendo Switch. I wouldn't call this a deal at all, but like a bundle type thing. And let me go over what GameStop is actually doing. The reason I'm talking about this is because I actually really want to call out GameStop for what they're actually doing with the Nintendo Switch Lite specifically. So let's go over to GameStop and let's go ahead and show you what I'm actually talking about. So basically what I'm talking about here is you can buy a Nintendo Switch Lite, but of course GameStop being GameStop, they want to do some kind of shady business practice, and the business practice they're doing here is you can see all these Nintendo Switches require you to buy a game. You have to get a game with these bundles, and the problem with these bundles is they're already pre-made bundles, so you can't like choose buy a Nintendo Switch and buy a game at your choosing, you have to buy the game that's already currently with these bundles. So for instance, we have this Minecraft bundle, and this Minecraft bundle seems all in well, but it's $229. The Smash Brothers one is $259. The Mario Kart 8 one is $259 as well. And you can see with the three bundles that they currently have offered right here, the Minecraft, Mario Kart, and Smash Brothers bundle, is the fact that you're not getting a discount at all, which is actually very shady. So pretty much you're gonna be paying full price for a game. If you don't know anything about Minecraft on the Nintendo platforms, that's the retail price for Minecraft, $30. So as they're adding on $30 with the Minecraft one, that one's not a discount at all either, and that's actually kind of shady, just because you may not want to buy a game with it. Or for instance, you're a person that wants a second Nintendo Switch for whatever the case may be, you can't just flat out buy one. You have to buy a stinking game with it, which sucks, which you may not want a game with it. I guess if you're buying a brand new Nintendo Switch and you never owned one, I guess you really have nothing to lose, because you have to buy a game anyway to play the system. So maybe it's not that bad, especially since Nintendo Switches are extremely hard to find now. But it's still kind of shady, just because you may not have the cash for a game, and you may not actually you may just want to buy the system. And on top of that, there are a lot of free games to play on the Nintendo Switch as well, so you may want to buy just the Nintendo Switch and then buy a game later and play whatever free game that's on the store, on the eShop, which is, this whole deal just doesn't make sense. And the thing that makes this deal really make no sense for GameStop anyway is just due to the fact that people already know this. GameStop is a company that only really profits off of used items. So by bundling a brand new Nintendo Switch and a brand new game, apparently these are brand new games, they're not really going to be making any money off this, because the market for GameStop is not brand new equipment. It's mostly the used market. They buy games for like pennies and they resell them for roughly full price, around $60, and that's what makes them the most profit. So I don't understand why they would do this. It's not like they're going to be making that much money off of these deals. It just seems really shady. It just doesn't make sense, GameStop being GameStop. And from what I remember, also GameStop has done things like this in the past. I think I remember with the original Nintendo Switch back at launch, I think they were kind of hard to find, and I think I remember seeing bundles for that where it was like, you can buy the Nintendo Switch, but it's going to cost you around $500. You have to buy a case in this bundle. You get a couple games, you get some steering wheel accessories or some junk that nobody really wants, just to try to hike the price up to like $500, as far as I remember when I was looking at Nintendo Switches when they first came out, which is actually kind of sad. And then to make this deal apparently even kind of worse for buyers, apparently, I don't know where I seen this, but apparently if you get these deals from it, it says, I don't know where it said this, but I thought it said somewhere, oh yeah, it does say. It says items in this bundle may ship in separate packages. So that pretty much means if you buy this, you may not get the game, or you may not get the Nintendo Switch at the same time, and that doesn't make sense either. Why wouldn't GameStop just ship these in the same packages? It's not like these games, it's not like this whole bundle is so big it can't fit in one box. Honestly, this just doesn't make any sense to me, and I really don't understand why GameStop is actually doing this. It's honestly just hurting their brand, and it's making people scratch their heads about a deal like this. It is what it is. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not also a good deal for many reasons. You're forced to get a game with your Nintendo Switch. It is what it is, but I did want to bring up these Nintendo Switch Lite bundles that GameStop are currently offering. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.